You just told my wife to leave the restaurant. That one sentence silenced the entire Vivre Blanc dining room. The clinking of silverware halted mid-air. All eyes turned to the man who had just entered, Jordan Moore. His face expressionless, his gaze ice-cold, but in his voice, a storm was gathering, barely restrained. But that wasn't where the story began. It began on a quiet weekend morning when Alina Moore, a brown-skinned university professor with a PhD and nearly 2 decades of public policy research, stood silently before an ivory-colored invitation card placed on the kitchen counter. It wasn't for a conference. It wasn't an award ceremony. It was a birthday party. Madison Langford, the 6-year-old daughter of the prominent Langford family, was having her celebration at Vivre Blanc, the city's most exclusive restaurant, where every chair had to be worthy of the person sitting in it. Jordan, Alina's husband, had been a key strategic partner of the Langford Group for over a decade. He was the one who had confirmed the reservation at Table 3, near the grand window framed in cascading wisteria blossoms, where the late afternoon sun would usually spill down like a silk veil. Alina turned over the card. No personal note. No, we hope you'll join us. Just her name, spelled correctly, perfectly. For many, that would be enough. But Alina was different. She had walked into too many rooms where the first glance was more of a scan than a welcome, where even a title couldn't shield her from the unspoken verdict. She doesn't belong here. And she understood one thing: Vivre Blanc wasn't just a restaurant, it was a stage. Every table was a placement, every guest a role to play. And she, a brown-skinned woman with no press coverage, no brand endorsement, was about to step into a space where skin color entered the room before your name ever did. But Alina didn't flinch. She folded the card, slipped it into her purse. Outside the window, Jordan's silver sedan was already waiting. She was never fond of parties, but today she would go. Not for the birthday, but for the silence that always filled the room when she walked into places like this. And this time, there would be no silence. And if you too have ever walked into a room like that, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss stories like this one. And stories that don't need to scream to be heard all the way through. Alina arrived right on time. She stepped out of the car wearing a simple white dress with a modest V neckline, her hair neatly pinned in a low bun, and the same worn leather shoes that had carried her through hundreds of academic conferences. No designer handbag, no flashy jewelry, no cloud of luxury perfume trailing behind her. But with each step, there was poise. Not the kind that enters to impress, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and knowing full well others don't. Vivre Blanc shimmered like a block of polished marble in the heart of the old city, its revolving door turning slowly as if it were deciding who deserved entry. As she pushed it open, a wave of cold air, scented with candles and wine, rolled out, and in that moment, the first gaze hit her like a spotlight. A blonde receptionist stood behind the check-in counter, offering a faint smile. Not overtly rude, but just sharp enough to say, "I doubt you belong here." Alina approached calmly and spoke her name. "I have a reservation. Alina Moore, Table 3, by the window." The woman swiped her finger across the screen. 1 beat, 2. Then she stopped. "I don't see your name on the list." No apology, no confusion, just a flat line, delivered in a monotone voice. Alina kept a polite smile, holding on to patience. "The table was reserved by Jordan Moore, under my name. Could you check again, please?" The receptionist looked up. Her eyes scanned, from Alina's hair to her dress to those old leather shoes. Then, silence. No nod, no refusal, no explanation. Just left her standing there, as if she didn't exist. Behind her, a white couple stepped in, their shoes tapping softly on the hardwood floor. Suddenly, the receptionist brightened, turning toward them with a voice a full octave lighter. "Mr. and Mrs. Langston, your table is ready." Alina watched them being escorted inside. No name check, no delay, just welcomed. She remained still. 15 years of researching the architecture of inequality. Hundreds of hours lecturing on invisible systems of power. And now, that very system was teaching her a lesson of its own. about silence, about how sometimes people don't need to insult you. They just need to pretend you're not even there. Alina was still standing there. The antique wall clock above the reception desk ticked minute by minute. She watched the minute hand move, as if it were measuring how much of her patience was being worn down. 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. In that time, not a single staff member spoke to her again. A few fleeting glances, and then they looked away. She had become like an extra detail in a room designed for perfection. She asked again. The response remained unchanged. "You're welcome to wait in the lounge if you like." Lounge, meaning the velvet-upholstered seats near the restroom, tucked behind a wooden screen. A holding pen for those who hadn't quite met the standard, while the system took a little more time to deal with them. She declined. She turned her gaze toward the dining area. Each table like a miniature stage, each guest performing their role seamlessly. And then she saw it. Table 3. The table Jordan had specifically said he reserved for her. The one near the window, where the light hit just right. Enough to let her skin glow naturally, no filter needed. The table with the vase of wisteria. The same flower Jordan once said reminded him of her. Soft but unforgettable. No one touches it without remembering. But that table was occupied. Veronica Langley. Platinum blonde hair, dark evening gown, that familiar smile of the elite. She sat in the chair like it had always been hers. No one asked her name, no one confirmed her reservation. Alina had never met her, but recognized the type instantly. Someone the system would always make space for. At that moment, a man in a tailored suit, clearly the manager, stepped out from the interior. He approached Alina, his voice polite, yet unaware that every word he was about to speak would lay one more brick in the wall of exclusion. "We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. It's possible our system made an error." However, his eyes flicked toward the now occupied table 3. "We can offer you a different seat, near the kitchen. It's very quiet." Quiet. Alina tightened her grip on her handbag. For a moment, she could hear the blood rushing in her ears. This wasn't a denial, it was a dismissal. Polished, courteous, and entirely intentional. A seat near the kitchen, a subtle reminder that her presence in this space was an exception. An inconvenience to be handled. She didn't step away. She simply asked in a voice barely above a whisper, "Did you just ask me to give up the seat my husband reserved for me? To make room for someone else?" The manager avoided her gaze. No one answered, but the answer was written everywhere. In the way the entire room tried not to look at her, and yet couldn't look away. Exclusion doesn't always come with action. Sometimes it only needs a silent agreement, a moment of suspended quiet. Alina stood motionless, but behind the counter a glance flickered her way. A young man of color, arranging glassware on a tray, looked up. He saw her, truly saw her. Their eyes met for a few short seconds. No words. But in his gaze there was something close to an apology. Then, as if reminded by someone, he dropped his head, turned away, and resumed his task. Alina didn't know his name, but in that moment, at least one person had seen her. Alina was still standing there, in the grand foyer of Vivre Blanc, surrounded by the indifferent glances of the staff, and behind her the echo of laughter rising from already crowded tables. She didn't leave. She didn't lash out. She simply stood still. But that stillness was not weakness. It was a slow, steady drumbeat echoing through a room too used to the clink of silverware and the clatter of wine glasses. And then, a sound, so soft it barely registered, but powerful enough to turn heads. Not the roar of an engine, but the smooth glide of electric wheels across stone. As gentle as wind brushing against glass, yet unmistakable to those who recognize the signature of subtle power. A silver-grey Tesla pulled up to the entrance. A rare, limited edition model, one of only a few dozen in the entire country. No name on the license plate, but anyone who had ever done business above the 20th floor knew exactly who it belonged to. The door opened, and he walked in. Jordan Moore, a flawlessly tailored grey suit. No assistant, no security detail, No need for red carpets or camera flashes. He didn't need to prove anything. His very presence was the definition of power. Jordan didn't look around. He headed straight for the reception desk. With every step, the air thickened. Laughter faded. A waiter pouring wine froze mid-motion. Gareth, the restaurant manager, snapped to attention. And then Jordan stopped. He saw her dash. The woman standing upright, silent, like a single low note intentionally left out of a symphony. No words were needed, just the shift in Jordan's eyes, from curiosity to cold, was enough to tell everyone in the room what had just happened. "How long have you been standing here?" His voice was deep, measured, but carried something no one dared challenge. Alina simply looked at him, saying nothing. Because she knew Jordan Moore didn't need a story to understand. His gaze turned slowly to Gareth. "You took the table I reserved for my wife, and gave it to whom?" The entire space seemed to freeze. Gareth stammered, his lips moving as if language had abandoned him. We didn't know she was your wife." It sounded like an apology, but to Jordan it was proof of something far worse, a deliberate choice. He shifted the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, but a line drawn in stone. "And if she weren't my wife, would she have been allowed to sit there?" No one answered, no one needed to, because the entire room had just heard a truth louder than any voice. No one in the room dared to move. Jordan stood there, his gaze slicing clean through the air, stopping precisely on Gareth's face. In that moment, Alina was no longer the woman denied a table. She was now the epicenter of a collision, one Vivre Blanc's entire system never saw coming. A clash between the person they assumed was outside the circle and the man quietly holding the blueprint for how that circle operates. "You know who I am," Jordan said, voice even. Gareth swallowed hard. Of course, Mr. Moore, you're a long-time VIP guest, but this situation—" "No," Jordan interrupted. "I'm not a VIP guest. I'm the one who signed the expansion contract for Vivre Blanc's third location in Seattle. I'm the one paying your legal department's salaries. And what exactly did you just do to my wife, inside a system I'm financially sustaining?" The air thickened like solid ice. Stolen glances. Cutlery froze mid-air. Everyone in the room began to understand. This wasn't just a front desk mishap. Jordan took a slow step toward table 3. He looked directly at Veronica Langley, who sat as if the entire restaurant belonged to her. For the first time, her polished smugness cracked. "Do you realize," Jordan asked, "that you just sat in the place meant for a woman this system decided wasn't qualified enough?" Veronica opened her mouth to speak, but he didn't wait, because the question wasn't for her. It was for the whole room, for the eyes that dropped when Alina was blocked at the door, for the handshakes made under the silent agreement of who belongs and who doesn't. Jordan turned back to Gareth. "You didn't just insult my wife, you confirmed a systemic flaw. And I want to know, how many others has this happened to? How many people weren't allowed to sit at the tables they deserved, just because they didn't look like everyone else?" Gareth froze. All the excuses he might have used to brush off minor mistakes crumbled now, in front of the man quietly holding the chain's entire balance sheet. Jordan looked over at Alina. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was enough. And for the first time that evening, the silence in the room wasn't born of disdain, but of fear. Jordan didn't shout. He didn't slam the table. He didn't demand justice through rage. He simply stood there, bathed in the restaurant's soft golden light, with cold eyes and a voice so steady and low it chilled the air. "She's not wearing gemstones, not in designer heels. Doesn't speak like someone who brunches with old money financiers." Jordan turned his head, looking toward the diners who were still cautiously watching from behind their wine glasses, then back at Gareth. "But her name was in the system, and you erased it." No one spoke. No staff member stepped forward to defend him. Because everyone knew Jordan was right. Alina remained silent, but in the way she stood, in the way the light hit the bridge of her nose, the furrow between her brows, everyone could feel that this wasn't just a woman being humiliated. This was a woman who had lived through this more than once. "I've had to fight to get into rooms like this," Alina said, her voice calm, unwavering. "I fought with credentials, degrees, research, and years of contribution." She looked Gareth directly in the eye. "But I never expected to still be pushed out of a seat that was reserved, simply because someone decided I didn't fit the setting." Jordan gave a small nod. "We didn't ask for special treatment. We only asked for the truth to be honored." He pulled out his phone. One swipe. On the screen, the reservation confirmation, Table 3, under the name Alina Moore, with timestamp, reservation code. Digital signature from Vivre Blanc's internal booking system. "You knew this existed," Jordan said, "and you still deleted it." Gareth began to breathe more heavily. His eyes darted, searching for somewhere to hide. But in this room, there were no more shadows. Jordan put his phone away and spoke again, softly, almost like a whisper. "So I'll ask again, Gareth. If my wife didn't carry the Moore name, if she weren't married to me, where exactly would you have seated her today?" Gareth stayed silent. The question needed no answer. The entire room had already heard it, in his silence. And from that silence, the collapse began. Jordan didn't say another word. He pulled out his phone again, this time not to show evidence, but to make a call. 3 rings. "Rachel," he said briskly, "I need an internal board meeting within the hour, virtual, no need to wait for full attendance. The sooner the better." He didn't look at Gareth, but the next words were unmistakably for him. "You'll want to be there, and bring your lawyer." Gareth opened his mouth, ready to object, but Jordan's stare froze every syllable in his throat. Alina remained silent. She didn't need to speak. This had long surpassed the bounds of a service mishap. This was now a system reckoning. Jordan turned to her and extended his hand. "Let's go." Alina didn't move immediately. She looked one last time at Table 3-, the chair by the window, bathed in soft light, with a pale lavender wisteria in its vase, a chair the system once denied her. And now, the entire system was paying for it. 1 hour later, the internal boardroom lit up. Jordan sat at the head of the table, the city skyline glowing through the glass wall behind him. Each executive's face appeared on the screen, some on vacation, some at home. But all of them understood if Jordan Moore was calling a meeting this urgently, it was no small matter. He didn't waste words. On the shared screen, a dataset from Vivre Blanc's reservation system over the past 12 months. A file no one knew Jordan had quietly requested from the tech team. 17 instances of black or brown guests having their confirmed reservations erased, he said. 12 of those were replaced by white guests who arrived later. Each row, a case. Each line, a name, a confirmation code, a timestamp of deletion. And in every single edit log, one name appeared as the user of record, Gareth Simmons. No more excuses, no more misunderstandings. Only a broken structure hidden behind polite procedures. Jordan stood. He opened his briefcase and took out a sealed envelope. A termination letter, signed, effective immediately. "Gareth," he said, "this isn't internal discipline. This is a statement. I'm rebuilding this system from the bricks you just rotted out." Gareth said nothing. There was nothing left to say. For the first time, a chair denied to a woman of color wasn't just restored. It became the foundation for dismantling. A broken structure that had stood untouched for far too long. News didn't need the press to explode. It started with one leaked internal email, then spread to PR industry group chats, then to forums dedicated to luxury service reviews. And within 48 hours, Vivre Blanc was no longer known as a luxury restaurant. It had become a living example of discrimination, masked as standard procedure. On Yelp, a new thread of comments began to rise. I was asked to move to a table near the restroom. My boyfriend, who's Arab, was asked for ID twice before being served. I waited 35 minutes with a reservation, while guests who looked wealthier were seated immediately. No one was surprised, but no one had ever dared expose it before. At Vivre Group headquarters, Jordan held an open meeting. Everyone, from servers to hosts, chefs to customer service agents, was invited to attend. No official minutes, no PR director moderating, just Jordan Moore standing among them. Not as CEO, but as someone with a single honest question. If any of you ever stayed silent out of fear of losing your job, today you won't lose a thing. And then, for the first time in years, hands were raised. Isaiah, the black waiter, recounted the night he was pulled from the main shift because he didn't fit with VIP clientele. A receptionist shared how she was reprimanded for addressing a casually dressed guest as Sir instead of Mr. A cook spoke about being asked to adjust a dish for a black customer because they probably have different taste preferences. Jordan listened to every voice. He didn't interrupt once. When they finished, he said just one thing. From now on, you don't report with a forced smile. You report with your truth. Outside, the media began circling, hungry for a formal statement from Vivre Blanc. Jordan didn't hide. He invited a small group of reporters inside, right to table 3. No backdrop, no special lighting, just a single white peony in a vase, and one empty chair. This is the seat someone was denied, even though it was rightfully hers, Jordan said. And from this denied seat, we're going to rewrite the service standards of this entire system. And just like that, the domino effect no longer stopped at the restaurant's walls. It had reached the entire luxury service industry. 1 week after the Table 3 incident, the Vivre Blanc brand, once a venue for CEOs, ministers, and A-list celebrities, had become a case study in corporate ethics classes. International headlines read, "The table that changed everything." From fine dining to facing the truth, how a quiet woman exposed a loud lie. Inside the company, many expected Jordan to issue a polished statement, fire a few people, and return the restaurant to business as usual. But he didn't. Instead, he sent a system-wide email. Vivre Blanc will temporarily close for 3 weeks. Not to calm the public, but to dismantle a structure of privilege, from recruitment practices to table reservations. Meeting rooms came alive again, but not with talk of winter menus or PR budgets. Instead, they tackled the core of operations. Who controls the reservation list? How many unspoken suggestions are based on brand image fit? Why did no one review Gareth's system edits over the last 12 months? Jordan instructed every department to rewrite their operational manuals from scratch. No copy-pasting from the old. If a system once functioned to exclude someone like Alina, he said, then it doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be dismantled. Gareth Simmons, the former manager, was no longer the point. The real issue was how many Gareths are still out there, operating under more forgivable disguises. We did it to preserve the brand image. It was just a small oversight. There was no bad intent. Those polite justifications, Jordan called them educated toxicity. Then came a move unprecedented in the industry. He invited former clients to participate in a reform summit. Not to appease, but to wake them up, to force those who had paid for luxury, to confront the truth they had unknowingly helped sustain its harm. Some declined, some made excuses, but a small group showed up, and they fell silent as Alina shared her experience. Not with anger, but with a clarity that chilled the room. "I don't want you to feel guilty," Alina said. "I want you to ask yourself every time you enter a room, who wasn't invited? Who was left outside? And why didn't I notice?" And then, for the first time in 14 years, the Vivre Blanc logo was taken down from the facade. Not to be replaced, but to pause and ask whether the brand still deserved to exist at all. 3 weeks after the Vivre Blanc sign came down, the restaurant reopened. No grand reopening, no press coverage, just a simple message posted on the door. We didn't change to please anyone. We changed because we finally saw ourselves. And on the first night, as the chandeliers lit up once more, one person walked through the door. No need for introductions, no need to be on the guest list. Alina Moore, the same simple white dress. No designer purse, no flashy jewelry. But this time, her gaze was different. No more waiting. no more hesitation, only the calm of someone who no longer needs to prove her worth to anyone. Jordan walked beside her, but at a respectful distance. This moment belonged to her. As she entered the foyer, Alina locked eyes with someone she didn't expect to see again. Isaiah. No longer the quiet waiter who hadn't dared speak up that night. Tonight, he stood tall in a tailored suit in his new role, Director of Guest Experience. He stepped forward, offering a sincere smile and a respectful bow. "Your table is ready, Doctor." More. No more words were needed, because sometimes all it takes is a name spoken correctly, a seat rightfully given, to redefine what justice truly means. Table 3 wasn't special, at least not in terms of location. A table by the window, framed by violet curtains, with a low vase of flowers and a soft pendant light from above. But tonight, it had become sacred, without needing a chapel. Alina sat down. Her fingers touched the wooden surface, lightly, as if listening for memory. On the table sat a small bouquet of white peonies, the flower Jordan knew she'd loved since her university days. And next to it, a folded card. No envelope, no signature. She opened it. Inside, handwritten in careful strokes, "You weren't the first." Alina froze, her eyes lifted from the words, gazing out the window. Outside was a city gleaming with lights, where appearances and power still reigned, but inside, a different silence now existed. Deeper, truer. Jordan remained beside her, saying nothing. He didn't need to, because Alina understood. This wasn't just about her. This was about every person who had ever entered rooms like this, only to be met with scanning eyes, courteous yet cruel rejections, or a silence so long it cut like glass. She placed her hand gently on the card, folded it shut, and said softly, "Then let's make sure. I'm the last." Jordan nodded, his eyes dimming. A silent vow accepted, no declaration needed. Table 3-, once a symbol of exclusion, was now a monument of promise, a whisper of history, no spotlight, no applause, just flowers, light, and the truth. For the first time, Vivre Blanc's internal meeting room was assembled without a single KPI chart, financial graph, or PowerPoint slide. Just one microphone placed at the center of the room. And on the screen behind it, a single sentence: "Say what you were once forced to swallow." Isaiah, now in the sharp suit of the Director of Guest Experience, stepped up first. He approached the mic. His voice was deep, steady, unshaken. "I worked here for 4 years. I saw black and brown guests seated near the restroom. I saw more qualified colleagues never get promoted. And I used to think I didn't have the power to change anything." He looked around the room. But it turns out, sometimes all it takes is one gaze that's seen. One time speaking up, to begin everything. No one responded, but some lowered their eyes, others inhaled quietly. Next came Rachel, the assistant manager. "I once received verbal instructions. If guests didn't meet the standard dress code, keep them waiting in the front lobby, as long as possible. I knew it was a way to filter people out. But I was afraid of losing my job." Her voice cracked slightly. Jordan Moore sat silently. No interruptions, no notes, just listening. As if every word spoken was another brick being pulled from the old wall. Then Lisa, Jordan's personal assistant, stepped forward. "I was once asked to edit reservation records, and I knew something wasn't right. But I told myself it's not my business. I've learned that silence is also a form of complicity." No one was reprimanded, no one was written up. Because this wasn't a disciplinary session. This was a reckoning, a beginning. At the end, Jordan said just one thing: "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be honest from this day forward." When the International Conference on Diversity and Equity in Hospitality was held in Chicago, Alina Moore's name was listed prominently as a keynote speaker. The organizers expected a rousing speech, a grand finale to the public firestorm ignited by the Vivre Blanc incident. But Alina declined. No angry statements, no proud declarations. Instead, she submitted a document to the organizers. a crisp 24-page paper titled Table 3, Silent Power and the Geography of Exclusion. It wasn't a manifesto, it was a lens. Alina didn't write about herself. She analyzed seating layouts in high-end restaurants from New York to San Francisco, correlating table placement with skin tone, and exposing how comfort is sometimes designed to look like fairness, but is not. On the last page, a single line: "If you can't change the room, start with the table." The paper went viral, not because it was angry, but because it was precise and impossible to refute. Restaurants began re-examining their floor plans. A luxury hotel chain in Paris updated its proactive communication policy for guests who were denied reservations. A leading hospitality school added Alina's paper to its core curriculum. No one heard Alina chant a slogan, but everyone heard her. Veronica Langley, the woman who once walked into Table 3 like the world had been laid out for her to choose, called Jordan Moore. Her voice was soft, almost contrite. "I just spoke with the Langley Foundation. We'd like to make a donation, call it a goodwill contribution, to help bring closure to all this." Jordan wasn't surprised. He was familiar with how people like Veronica tried to buy silence with money. He sat upright, eyes still fixed on the screen, and replied, "Your name isn't being tarnished, it's simply being clarified." Veronica went quiet. She knew there was no way to purchase a seat already lost, because for the first time, truth didn't need a spokesperson. It just needed the space to be seen. In the media, there were no explosive interviews, no talk shows, no cancel culture hashtags, just articles, data, and a rising murmur within the industry. If even Vivre Blanc had to change, what are we still waiting for? Elsewhere in the city, Alina sat quietly in her small office on campus. Outside, students were rehearsing for graduation. Jordan sent her a short message. "They still don't understand why you never gave a speech, but they're listening to every word you've written." Alina didn't respond right away. She just smiled, because she knew when truth becomes clear enough, it doesn't need defending. It only needs to be put in the right place. Sunlight poured through the crystal-clear windows. Vivre Blanc was no longer the same. No more old signage, no more preferred seating lists for valued clientele. Only the soft clinking of cutlery. And a feeling in the air, as if everyone sensed something had changed. In the midst of it all, Table 3 remained in its original place. No longer the window seat framed by wisteria, reserved for VIPs. Now a landmark no one could ignore. On the wall behind it hung a black and white photograph. A woman seated in profile, light gently cast across a serene face. She wasn't looking at the camera. She wasn't posing. It was simply a moment where someone was allowed to just be. Below the image, a small silver plaque read, "Table 3, where grace redefined the rules," in honor of Dr. Alina Moore. At a nearby table, two young diners had just placed their order. One pointed toward the photograph and whispered, "Who is she?" The other looked at the image for a long moment, then replied softly, "She's the reason this place doesn't have the table near the kitchen anymore." The story had quieted. But the truth doesn't need noise to exist. It only needs a seat in the right place. And someone calm enough to never walk away. Some battles don't begin with gunfire, but with a glance that's dismissed. Some victories don't need applause, only a seat no longer denied. And some people, like Alina Moore, don't need power to prove their worth. They just need to stay when the entire room wants them to leave. This story isn't about a restaurant. It's not just about a dinner. It's a reminder that in every space we walk into, there are chairs we don't see, but they decide who gets heard and who is asked to stay silent. So if you've ever been told to step aside, remember this: sometimes your silence is exactly what makes the entire room start to change. Have you ever witnessed a Table 3 moment? Share it with us in the comments. And if you believe this story deserves to be told, don't hesitate to like, share, or subscribe to the channel so we can keep these stories from ever being forgotten.